Fostoria, Ohio is where Adrian hails from. He said, if Ohio State and Michigan play for the national title this year, do you think it would be the most hyped up game in the history of college football? We were so close to finding out last year. Let's all take a deep breath for a second. Let's just picture this. Fun mental exercise. No, I don't think it would be the most hyped up game in history. I'll tell you why. So it'd be very hyped, but it would be strange. If Ohio State and Michigan play in the regular season, it's one of the biggest games of the year because we see it every year. If Ohio State and Michigan play again in the national championship game, for Ohio State and Michigan, it would be the most hyped game ever because it would be a whole new version of the game, a whole new chapter of the rivalry with the biggest stakes in the sport imaginable on the line. There's two things to remember here. Number one, it would feel kind of strange to the rest of the country. We saw Georgia and Alabama rematch a couple of years ago, and that was from the SEC title game to the national title game, and it was a huge deal in the South. Nationally, people looked at it and they watched it, and it was a high level that the game was played at. But I think a lot of the nation looked at it and said, "Is the postseason failing us if we're able to see rematches that we just saw?" Now, I didn't personally feel that way. I don't care about the rematches. You give me the best teams, and it shakes out however it shakes out. But that wasn't the question he asked. He didn't ask, how would you personally feel about it, Josh? He said, would it be the most hyped game ever? Inside the Big Ten, inside those two programs, hype would be off the charts. It would be an 11 on the 1 to 10 scale. In Bozeman, Montana, in Tucson, Arizona, they would look at it and they would say, I'll watch, but Ohio State, Michigan, I just saw it. If anything, I think some people would look at it as taking a little bit of the luster off of all the hype that rightfully is attached to the regular season game. Because that's supposed to be once a year, and it's supposed to be something you build and build and build to, and then it's 4 quarters, and then you live with the result, and they're not on the field again until the end of November next year. Then all of a sudden, in this man-made structure of a postseason we have in college football, they play again. And that's the other thing I wanted to talk to you about. So I want to talk to Ohio State and Michigan fans now, because we were kind of close to this last year. Ohio State came within a missed field goal of going to the national title game. Michigan had turnover issues. TCU deserved to win the game. I'm not doing that thing. I'm saying each of them were very close to punching their ticket to the national title game, but neither did. But what if they did? What would it have felt like? I'm telling you, I think it would have felt a little weird. Now, that's the nation's perspective. Zoom into Ohio State and Michigan. Let me ask you guys something. There are pockets of fans in any rivalry game, Ohio State and Michigan's no different, where they say, boy, this rivalry game outcome, it means more to me than anything. There are pockets of fans who say that. I'm not saying it's a wholesale, widely held opinion. But those people, when you were to press them on it, they would say, well, it's because that's always been there. Ohio State and Michigan has always been there. We've done this for like 950 years. So the result of that is pure. It is what's great. It's what's right about our program versus their program. It's what's right and great about college football as I know it, and I've known it my whole life. They look at the playoff, and they look at that as, mattering, but they look at it as being kind of a man-made structure. It's like looking at a skyscraper, which is impressive, versus looking at a volcano. A volcano's always been there, so it's impressive in a totally different way than a skyscraper is. The playoff's like the skyscraper, and you get to the top of the skyscraper, and that's wonderful. But man, if you could be around a volcano when it erupts, it's an act of nature, and it's totally different. It's a totally different thrill. Well, those people who say, I'd rather win the rivalry game and let whatever happens in the playoff happen, and the people who put more emphasis on the regular season rivalry outcome, that's just how they feel. Because they look at the playoff and they think, well, the only reason I care about that is just because we all tell ourselves that's the end-all be-all. We're trying to mirror the NFL and other sports, and okay, so we're going to build a championship crowning mechanism at the very end. But that's only come around lately. The Ohio State-Michigan game's been around since leather helmets. So pardon me if I value that a little bit more, because my grandpa didn't talk to me about the college football playoff growing up. He talked to me about the game. He talked to me about Bo. He talked to me about Woody. He talked to me about things that happened even before then. So I get it. And so if this were to happen, there would be kind of a weird feeling amongst some Ohio State Michigan fans, especially if the winner of the game lost the title game. It would be so weird. Now, it would feel good for the team that won, but it would also feel weird because everyone would have to look at each other across the table and know, you know what the outcome in the game was. I remember with Bama and Georgia a couple of years ago. Bama goes in as a 6.5-point underdog, by the way, in the SEC title game and ran Georgia out of the building. And then Jamison Williams, who was a key player in that game, goes down in the national title game, and Georgia ends up pulling away in the fourth quarter and winning it. I think it was 33-18 or something like that. Georgia should celebrate. They won the title, but there was always this talking point in the conversations down south of, yeah, well, first off, if J-Mo would have been healthy, Bama would have won. And secondly, we saw what happened a month earlier. Yeah, Georgia won the rematch, but they didn't get it done in the SEC title game. I think that's what it would sound like, honestly, if Ohio State and Michigan played again for the national title game. But we would still honor and respect the outcomes because that's what we do here